If you're looking for one of America's true political microcosms, you don't need to look much farther than Wisconsin. Today we spoke with Senator Ron Johnson, a former businessman who came to Washington to change the way they do business, from securing the border to protecting families from runaway government debt. A Packers fan who believes you treat public service just like the sport of football, by leaving it all out on the field. From Ballard Studios in Washington, D.C., it's 13th and Park.
The hard things that are necessary, we either do it or we'll pay the price down the road.
That often is missing in politics.
We have to solve everything.
It's a nightmare.
You and I can differ, but that doesn't mean you and I cannot be friends.
I have faith in the American people.
Those are the facts.
The Illuminati, right there. Aliens could have invaded and nothing would surprise me at this point.
We went from North Korea to M&M. That's a lot, man.
What's in this tea?
Senator, great to have you on 13th and Park. I got to start here. The whole world, at least the football world, was transfixed on Green Bay for the NFL draft. 600,000 people. That must have been a source of pride for the people of Green Bay in a franchise that's one of the greatest professional franchises in the history of sports.
Well, first of all, just like the Republican convention, people that came into the state that have never been there realized really what good, decent, common sense people Wisconsinites are. So I'm sure they really enjoyed that. I've always heard that as I travel around the country, people coming in to see Lambeau Field. I mean, it's kind of like a journey to Mecca in some respects. So a lot of people want to attend for that reason alone. But they'll say, I had my Dallas Cowboy jersey on and my Baltimore Raven, and people were still nice to me.
You said that you came to Washington because you were panicked for the country. That's one of the biggest reasons why you ran for Senate 15 years ago and why you're still at it today. How do you feel about the state of the country today? Do you still feel that kind of concern?
I'd say more hopeful. The fact that President Trump got elected is acting boldly and swiftly, trying to clean up the messes left by the previous radical left administrations, both Obama and Biden. When I ran in 2010, we were $14 trillion in debt. We'd experienced our first $1 trillion deficit. Now we're $37 trillion in debt. Our deficit's approaching $2 trillion, and it'll remain that high as far as the eye can see unless we reset the federal spending to a reasonable pre-pandemic level, which is what I'm fighting for right now. But radical leftism has put America down a path toward destruction in so many different ways. Culturally, I mean, boys competing against our girls, invading their locker rooms, their safe spaces, their bathrooms. I mean, this is beyond absurd. It's just unbelievable. And unfortunately, most of our media are radical leftists themselves, so they've tried to normalize all this just insane and destructive behavior.
So what do you hear from the people of Wisconsin on issues like that, Senator? I mean, you're there all the time. Isn't it go beyond partisanship and beyond politics? I mean, it's just common sense.
Well, the problem is we're a very divided state, and politics today is horribly divided. There are certainly people in the middle and claim to be in the middle, but the base is firmly on the left, firmly on the right. I'm firmly on the right because the right is all about freedom, about the values and principles that made this country great, versus this radical leftism that does nothing but destroy.
There's been a lot of press recently about the judge in Wisconsin. We're not talking about the Supreme Court race, which has got a whole wave of publicity, but Judge Dugan and kind of shielding an undocumented immigrant from ICE. Give me your sense of that situation and how you react to claims that, oh my gosh, this is a constitutional crisis, as opposed to this is someone doing what they should not be doing.
Well, the constitutional crisis would be if officers of the court continue to violate the law with impunity. I don't often agree with the radical left Supreme Court in Wisconsin, but I'll give them a big shout out and appreciation for the fact that they've suspended this judge. It was the right thing to do. What this judge did, being an officer of the court, knowing full well the illegal nature of her actions, she should have been arrested. She should be prosecuted. And the penalty should be as severe as the laws allow to set an example.
So years ago, you authored the Right to Try Act, and it was very personal for you, Senator. Tell us about that.
I had always been in favor of Right to Try. The Goldwater Institute had a state-by-state strategy, and I had met with them. I can't remember exactly what year this was, probably about 2013, 14. And 2 weeks afterwards, I had a young woman, a mom, with ALS. And she came in, we were talking about what possible cures, what type of federal support for research, that type of thing. And I just mentioned at that point in time that I support the Right to Try law. And tears started streaming down her face. It was that moment I said, I've got to champion this. This is the right thing to do. It's time now for a federal law to help support all the state laws. It offers a little more freedom, a little more hope to terminally ill patients. It's not perfect. We had to water it down because Big Pharma was not supportive of it. In the end, they said they wouldn't support it, but they weren't sabotaging the House. In fact, they did. And it really took President Trump to force the House to pass the Senate bill. Because what the House did is they passed a very partisan bill that had no chance in the Senate, knowing full well they were killing right to try.
Right.
I mean, it's pretty gross the way this place operates. It's an action-forcing bill. It's not a panacea. It forces the FDA to give patients faster access to some of these experimental drugs. What we need right now is a right to treat law. We shouldn't need it. But during COVID, as you saw the federal agencies captured and corrupted by Big Pharma, sabotage early treatment, sabotage the use of generic drugs. Doctors have full off-label prescription rights. If it's an FDA-approved drug, a doctor can prescribe it for any condition that doctor thinks it just might be helpful. But they couldn't do that during COVID. They were vilified for using things like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine. That's wrong. So I think at this point in time, we shouldn't need it, but we're working on a right to treat law, which just codifies off-label prescription rights for doctors.
But your first child, Carrie, was born with a congenital heart defect. It got very, very personal for you, as it does for so many families out there, Senator, who want the right to do everything they can to heal one of their own. What am I missing here?
Well, in our case, right to try really didn't impact or would have impacted my daughter. I just have nothing but reverence for our medical establishment in terms of what they can do in terms of surgery and how we've advanced medicine in terms of, heart defects. I mean, had my daughter been born 20, 30 years ago, she wouldn't have survived. She was born with something called transposition of the great arteries. So her aorta and pulmonary artery were reversed. She basically had two circulatory systems.
Wow.
So the first day of life, a doctor came in with a procedure where they had to rip a larger hole in her heart they catheterized her heart and to allow blood to oxygenate. And they try and get these kids down 2 years where the heart's large enough to perform surgery. 8 months later, her red blood cell count was getting too high, so they had to go and do the corrective surgery. Back then, they rebaffled the upper chamber of her heart because that was only a 5% mortality versus just switching the arteries and the pulmonary, that was a 50% mortality. Now as medicine advanced, now they just switch those arteries.
Yeah.
That's where I understood the true meaning of the word medical practice. That's a descriptive term.
Yeah.
Doctors practice medicine. They're hired hands, and their hands are tied. And it's the wrong way to have a medical establishment. We need doctors at the absolute pinnacle, the top of that treatment pyramid, because they are the healthcare provider that has the responsibility to the patient.
You've been very involved, obviously, with Homeland Security Committee, the infamous moment when the president almost lost his life in Butler, Pennsylvania. He was holding an immigration chart that was prepared, I think, by you. How important is it that we really continue to make our borders exactly what that name suggests, secure?
Well, you don't have a country if you don't have secure borders. We're a nation of immigrants. I mean, it was every wave of immigrant that came in this country and oftentimes perform jobs that people that already were affluent here wouldn't perform.
Yeah.
And so they come here seeking the freedom and the opportunity that America uniquely offers in human history. That's a big thing to do. It's a big risk they're taking. We're genetically risk takers as a result, but these are people that are coming here that are working hard. Take a look at the people doing the construction and the hard labor. By and large, it's recent immigrants to this country. So I want to welcome them, but we have to control it. And if it's uncontrolled and just let everybody in without any proper vetting, whatever, well, that's how these young women are raped and murdered. That's how you have drug trafficking and human trafficking, sex trafficking. So uncontrolled is a clear and present danger to this country. That's the Democrat path. And what's so tragic right now is, the courts didn't force President Biden to faithfully execute the laws. But now that he's let 10 million plus people in this country completely unvetted, now we're supposed to give every illegal immigrant full citizen due process rights. That's not workable. President Trump has to act swiftly. We need to get these criminals, these human traffickers, these sex traffickers, members of transnational criminal organizations out of this country. The sooner the better. If there's, miscarriage of justice, we ought to try and correct that. But justice is never perfect. There's always miscarriage of justice. It's just part of life. I would urge the president and everybody working for him to be as careful as possible, because every time they make a mistake, that mistake is going to be blown way out of proportion in most cases. Not in all cases, but in most cases. And so they need to be pretty careful. But it's hard to be careful when you have to act swiftly.
You've had a real passion for the Joseph Project. Tell our viewers what that is and why it's so important in connecting job seekers with employers who need workers.
I come from a manufacturing background. For the last 20, 30 years, we haven't been able to hire enough people for manufacturing. We tell all our kids you got to get a 4-year degree, which kind of implies that, factory work isn't for you. You got to get a white-collar job, right? So as a result, we're pretty well starving agriculture and manufacturing of the workers that we actually need. I mean, all work has value. The result of that is throughout Wisconsin, there's all kinds of opportunity in manufacturing, in agriculture, good paying jobs.
Right.
Employers can't find the people. And yet you've got pockets of very high unemployment, people who think there is no opportunity, that they're quite hopeless. And so, as soon as I became a U.S. Senator, I'm going, okay, how can we connect those individuals who don't really even know those opportunities that exist? Fair amount of serendipity. I hired somebody in staff who was a deacon of the Church of God in Christ. One thing led to another, and we developed this program working with the Sheboygan Economic Development Committee. They had something like 3,000 or 4,000 jobs, and we just, in 4 days of training, we just instilled the importance of attitude, commitment to success, what you do to be successful on the job, how to successfully interview. And then on the 5th day, they do interviews for real jobs, and people have got jobs that have transformed their lives. I mean, literally transformed their lives.
How successful has this program been to date?
Well, again, I wish we could say we've gotten thousands of people jobs, but we're approaching 1,000. But I've had people, when I say that, say, Senator, no, you've transformed thousands of lives, because it's not just my life. It's my family. It's my neighbors. It's been pretty impactful. Again, I wish it was universal. I wish, we could say hundreds of thousands of people's lives have been transformed, but, I'll take thousands.
We live in a time of social media. So one of the most popular things that ever involved you was the 2 promos, maybe there have been more, for the Tavern League. Were you surprised by kind of the reaction to that? Because I think what it did, it made you that much more just another guy, that you can kind of have a beer with.
Well, how that came about is my Protestant upbringing. I don't waste things, right? Prior to, I think it was the 2016 election, I got the endorsement by the Tavern League and go, well, it's kind of too late to really cut ads, and what can you do about it? Well, let's at least go down to a tavern in Oshkosh and take a picture of me with a beer. They poured me a full pint, okay? Now, I'm used to chugging 12-ounce beers, but I'm also very good at drinking fast. This is from sports. When I get thirsty, I can down a glass of water very quickly. So I was good at chugging beer. So once they took the photograph, right, I said, well, I can't waste that beer. So here, why don't you quick film this? So I quick filmed that. Again, I'm used to 12 ounces. This thing was probably closer to 20. So I get down to 12 and go, I'm just about drowning now, but I polished it off. And that video kind of went viral.
Last question, because we started with this, the Packers. You're a Packers fan. What is football Sunday like in the Johnson household when it comes to Packers football?
We used to get access to 8 tickets that my wife's uncle got from somebody that he used to sell to that got too old, didn't want to use them anymore. Okay, I'm laying this out because it's been really hard to get season tickets because they pass them from family to family. So that was a connection for many years. So we would show up, at 9 o'clock, tailgate in the parking lot, learned exactly wine was better than beer because you didn't have to go to the bathroom quite so often. So we learned how to tailgate, right? Those tickets dried up. My son-in-law knew somebody at his workout place, offered him 4 tickets. So all of a sudden we had 4 tickets there. But now you can also just buy tickets online. Right. So it's not so pressing that we had to be there every week. So I try and get to a game a year. It used to be a lot bigger when I was younger. Now that I get a little bit older, I'm happy to watch on TV.
Well, I'll tell you, my favorite team is the Baltimore Ravens. They're going to be playing in Green Bay sometime this fall. The schedules come out shortly. I hope to see you at that game.
Well, I can guarantee you the Packer fans will be nice to you.
As you said in the beginning, the people of Wisconsin are incredibly friendly people, and I'm now here to say you're one of them. You're one of the reasons why people feel so good. They have a smile on their face when they think about Wisconsin, much less they have a chance to visit.
Well, again, enjoy your time. Let me know where you're coming, and maybe we can hook up and have a chugging contest.
Looking forward to it. Take care, Senator.
Take care.